Hey Shazoolo and Shazoolo's audience and everybody else watching this video. I wanted to make this video, and I wanted to say a few things before I got started. First of all, this video is not an attack, not in any way, shape, or form. This is a response. I felt the need to respond not only to Shazoolo's video, but to some of the comments that he made, and speak honestly about my feelings and why I respond to Shazoolo, and get kind of clear the ear a little bit. So I decided to make this video, and I hope you guys understand once again that this is not an attack. It is just my honest feelings about the situation. Shazoolo made a video to me and to others, and so I felt the need to respond to that and to some of the comments that he made. Okay.
Now, I was just really basically reporting on this article from the UK.
Okay, so you've said on a couple occasions that you were just reporting this news from the UK to the United States and other places. And I don't think anybody genuinely believes that that was your only purpose for doing this video. Over and over again, you have stated and tried to allude in the comment section that the occult automatically leads to darker things. You didn't suggest, you keep kind of straw-manning the argument that we're making. No one is suggesting that you're saying that all occultists do these types of things. Some of the people in your video did, but that's not you. So I'm not going to try to say that that's you. But what it seems that you're suggesting in the comments, and I can pull up those comments and show you, is that occultism leads to something darker. And you also allude to that at the end of this video, and I'm going to engage those comments directly. So the problem that we have is you making this video stating that you have one purpose, but really have an underlying purpose of suggesting that occultism leads to these types of things.
This is a Christian channel, it's an apologetics channel, it's a channel that critiques other religions, occults, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, and it makes it.
It's comments like this, Shazoolo, that make me seriously doubt that you were ever an occultist. You may have dabbled, you may have owned a tarot deck, but let's face it, somebody who cooks macaroni and cheese once, we couldn't call them a chef, would we? Same as I can't call you an occultist because you don't really understand the term. You called it a religion. It's certainly not. Occultism is a path of knowledge to lead oneself closer to the divine. Occultism helps people understand their own lives better, their universe better, and helps them better themselves and those around them. It is not about harming people. It is not about being devious. It is not about hurting children. And the thing that I find most suspicious is that you seem to try to equate occultism with a religious standard, and it's simply not. The comment that I posted just now shows that as well. You try to compare occultism to the teachings of Jesus. But that's not really fair because occultism is the teachings of a lot of different people. So what you need to do is compare teaching to teaching, okay? In this case, you should compare the teachings of Jesus to the teachings of Aleister Crowley. Two people who both founded religions, two people who are both considered prophets. The thing is that neither one of them advocated the harm of children. In fact, Aleister Crowley was very much about personal freedom and everyone's right to carry out their own will. So the idea that he would advocate infringing one's will upon another freely just doesn't make sense. I mean, if you really understand his teachings, you would know that. But you don't understand his teachings. And I'm not saying that you were the one that was bashing him, but obviously the point of the video that you made was to suggest that occultism leads to harming of children or harming people. But you'd be hard-pressed to find occultism that most people follow today that would advocate that. Furthermore, a lot of the occultists that Crowley drew from were Christians. And so it seems funny that, we're sitting here arguing about, Christianity versus occultism when a lot of the modern occultists were quite pious Christians. And I'll give you an example. John Dee. You live in the UK. You must know who John Dee is. John Dee was an assistant to Elizabeth I. very well respected by her, and was also an occultist and started the Golden Dawn. A lot of what we know today as modern occultism comes from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and that has a lot of Christian influence. So, once again, if you really stand back and look at what occultism is, it's not incongruent with Christianity, and it's not incongruent with anything. It's a path of knowledge, about knowing yourself better, about knowing God better, however it is you see God.
So it shouldn't surprise anyone, firstly, that I would do a video like this.
Quite frankly, Shazoolo, I can't think of anyone who was surprised by this video, by the video that you made.
It's really got people jumping about, especially the pagans of YouTube, with regards to this, which does surprise me actually, because I don't think a single Satanist has even mentioned anything on my video board that I'm aware of anyway.
I'm frankly surprised that you're surprised. I mean, most pagans are occultists, so of course we're going to be interested in a video like this.
Misleading comments regarding myself personally, and like a lot of things like this, they tend to quickly degenerate into personal insinuations, that I'm not being honest.
Well, Shazoolo, you either were being woefully ignorant or dishonest. After all, it's your video. If you knew that we were commenting, then you must have seen at least some of the comments we made. But I don't see how you could have ever made that suggestion that we were defending this cult, unless you wanted to say that. You went on further to suggest that our comments were of the zealous nature. Because, Shazoolo, if you can't defeat someone's argument, you are notoriously known for character assassination. And I could make other evidence examples of this as well. But this is one of them, and it's a specific one. You accuse us of defending this cult. And even after I responded to you and said I did not make that comment, and asked you if you had read my comments, you did not retract that statement until I accused you of lying. And so I'm glad that I accused you of lying, because when I started saying that to some of your subscribers, you quickly backtracked and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, you didn't make that statement." And I thanked you for the apology at that time, but, it's pretty obvious what your intention was, and that's character assassination.
And next we have Priest Christopher. If you type his name, Priest Christopher and Prince Lord Chris, into YouTube, and you put my name in as well, maybe, look at how many video responses I've done to that guy. It's just loads and loads and loads, and it has to stop somewhere. So I'm pretty much done. And plus, I find it a bit hard to like somebody who slanders me all over YouTube.
I think that when it comes to Chris, he would find it pretty hard to like you too, because you've slandered him all over YouTube. And I'll give you an example. You made a video a while back about some unsavory people in the occult and in paganism, and from a comment that was made by Starhawk in one of her books, where she said that there were some unsavory people within paganism. And the funny thing is that you took that comment out of context and then added your own interpretation to it to suggest that people like Oberon Zell were the people that she was talking about to be unsavory. The thing is that Oberon Zell and Starhawk are friends. She was not talking about him, but people who are more predatory in nature. But Oberon Zell, to you, would be someone who is unsavory because he practices polyamory. Now, you alluded that Chris was an irresponsible pagan leader, and for recommending Oberon Zell to his younger responders and viewers and things like that, because he had this lifestyle. But you'll find that most people within the pagan community don't have a problem with polyamory. And for that matter, they don't have a problem with other quote-unquote alternative lifestyles either. So as long as they're not harming people and it's consenting adults, I don't see a problem with it either. But yet it didn't stop you from making this comment about Chris being irresponsible as a pagan leader. And that hurt him quite deeply, because he's not irresponsible. He takes very good pride in spiritually mentoring people and helping them find their correct path. And I thought it was, very hurtful of you to do that. And especially, I think, during the time that it happened as well, because during the time that was all going on, I was in the hospital. I was very sick. As you know, our son was born very early. He was born 3.5 months early, and so I was in the hospital, very sick with preeclampsia, and so he was having to deal with all that, and he was having these accusations that somehow he is hurting children and hurting people irresponsibly from you. So, don't just, you're going to have to look in the mirror with this one as well, Shazoolo. I'm not going to say that Chris is completely innocent, because he's completely not. He has called you names and things like that, but you have done this to him as well.
By calling me a liar and calling me this and calling me an idiot and things like that. And I screenshot those things as well, Chris.
As you can see, I also know how to screenshot.
Video message board. He said, quote, "You have also lied in this video when you said that you were not trying to label all occultists with this immorality, because in this comment you said killing others is simply out of line with Jesus's teaching. Not so with occultism, though. Not only is this false, but you are applying this immorality to occultism and not just certain occultists. To me, your deception is very clear, Shazoolo. I know you're trying to make it out to be evil. You're not fooling me one bit." And he basically says the same thing in his video response.
I don't think you fool a lot of the pagan community, seriously, the whole idea that you just did this to get the news across the pond, no, I don't buy it. And I don't think most people do, especially with your history, especially with the numerous videos that you've made, taking things out of context and, making misinterpretations about things that pagans said, like the example that I just gave. And there's more and more examples of this. You can go back to the first video that you ever did to me. The first video that you ever did to me was a response video to my video on spiritual journeying, where you suggested that spiritual journeying was somehow dangerous because of a few testimonials where people had issues. However, as I responded, which you never responded back to me, there are many more people who have found other spiritual activities to be much more dangerous. For example, straight preaching. It's a very dangerous spiritual activity compared to spiritual journeying. However, I haven't ever seen you do a video on the dangers of straight preaching and how people shouldn't do it. This is because one of your tactics is fear-mongering. And the idea is to put the notion or the seed of information in people's heads that occultism is dangerous and leads to the destruction of the soul and to internal darkness and things like that. And frankly, I've been an occultist for a very long time now, and I've never really run into the types of problems that people claim. I think most of the quote-unquote testimonials that you'll find in Christian sources are absolute crap, just like most of the testimonials about satanic ritual abuse turned out to be absolute crap.
Okay, I think what he failed to mention there, in that quotation there, is that I actually quote in the bit of dialogue that goes on in the video board there. I quote something from this book, which is a non-Christian source, by the way. It's called Witchcraft, a fascinating account of the history of witchcraft and those who were accused of its practice, by Gettis and Grosset. It's basically a dictionary, as I say, not a Christian book. And it says on page 275, and it's something that I've quoted this to Chris before, so it has quite a short memory probably by the looks of it, but it says, quote, "Occultism does have a darker side, and in some cases people may engage in occult practices in an attempt to gain power, to exert control over their environment and other people for selfish purposes, or to harm." Not my words. There are no laws to bind people to one set of beliefs or practices. And from the vast store of occult lore passed down through the ages, people are free to pick and choose elements to suit their own individual interests, requirements and beliefs. End quote.
This I find absolutely hilarious. You started this video off suggesting that you were not trying to allude anything about the occult, but then here you go quoting this book, which suggests something which you're trying to purvey, which is that occultism leads to immorality. What you don't seem to understand, and I'm not sure if this specific book talks about this or not, but take out the word occult and put in just about anything.
So you can see there that basically this sums up occultism in general now.
There are many different ways for people to gain power over others, and the occult is not the only way to do that. I'll give you an example. There's a lot of cults out there, and since this video, the last video was about cults, let's talk about cults for a second. Some of the most famous cults where people had gained control over others had to do with Christianity. Jim Jones, for example, who the People's Temple took their group to, and somebody in your comments even mentioned Jim Jones, so he's top on my mind. And I'm going to talk about David Koresh next. So Jim Jones gained control over his followers with the beliefs of Christianity and was able to direct them because Christianity expects people to be pious. It expects people to be obedient. And so from that obedience, they become obedient to their spiritual leaders, and it's very easy for a spiritual leader to take control of the people that depend on them and to even harm them and take advantage of them. You see that quite a bit. Now, I'm not saying that Christianity is alone in this, because it's definitely not. But I think you get the idea that you can't really single out the occult as something that leads to this, because if people want to gain control over others, they're going to find a way to do it. And whether it be money, whether it be religion, whether it be the occult, whether it be knowledge, whether it be, some sort of resource or something like that, people are going to do that. And this is one of the biggest problems that I have with your videos, is that you don't show the entire argument. You don't show both sides of the coin. You make intellectually dishonest arguments based on quotes in books, and then say, well, there you have it, without understanding the magnitude of what you're saying, without looking at the big picture. You simply interpret things for your own means, usually taking them out of context from books like the one that you're reading right now. And I can show you many different examples of this in your readings. You do this over and over and over again, with the obvious message that the occult leads to darkness. And I understand that based on your own supposed experiences, you might have that opinion. But, I really don't know if I can find your experiences to be genuine, because I really just know so little about them. I've gone to your blog and I've read your biography story. I don't really see much about the occult there, though. Something about a deck of tarot cards, but, not really much about the occult. But if you want people to, take you seriously and give you respect, then you should give them the same type of intellectually honest respect back. But you're being intellectually dishonest. And this quote shows it perfectly. It's a perfect example, so thank you for including it in your video.
I'm not necessarily talking about paganism here, and it's interesting the way it is.
I think, once again, you can't really speak about the occult without speaking about paganism, because a lot of the practices from the occult come from paganism.
Pagans, with the exception of Tannhaus, I know he says he's not a pagan anymore, who have responded and have become quite sort of uppity and up in arms and jumpy about this whole issue of satanic ritual abuse.
I know you don't live in the United States, and maybe that's part of the misunderstanding. Maybe you should come to visit here sometime and look at some of the churches that are here. Because I really believe, because I've been to England and only for a little bit. You know, I had a 5-hour horrible layover in Heathrow Airport. You guys, this food sucks. Anyway, at least in the airport it does. So I've been to there. I've been to France. I've been to Italy. I've been to Switzerland. And I've seen a lot of Christian churches there. We went to a couple different services and stuff like that. Yes, I went to church. You know, I really find that the churches there are absolutely gorgeous. And not only that, but the Christians there are much more understanding. The Christians here, I'm not saying all of them, because, you know, there's good Christians here too. I'm not going to try to bash all American Christians. My parents are American Christians, and they're pretty cool people. And I know a lot of other Christians who are pretty cool people. But there's a large percent, and I think if you look at the comments on your video, you can see a lot of American Christians who have, you know, this type of negativity towards pagans and negativity towards witchcraft and negativity towards the occult. And it's all over the United States, and it's coming from these Christian groups who spread just all-out hatred towards pagans. I can give you a quick story of my own. When I was much younger, when I was in my early 20s, and I had just started off in Wicca, and I was, you know, you're pretty much your uber proud convert, as just about any convert is to any religion. I'm sure when you first converted to Christianity and had your conversion experience, you were, you know, very zealous and go, you know, raring to go. Not that you're not, you know, very enthusiastic now, but, you know, there is something about being a new convert that I think you probably understand. And so I was a new convert to Wicca, very proud of my religion. I wore a lot of Wiccan jewelry, pentacle earrings, a pentacle necklace, and this was while I was at work. I made a video about this way back, so you can, I'll put that video in the response section too. But I was at work. I was working at Walmart, and I was approached by a Christian preacher who continued to kind of badger me all over the store. And this wasn't the only time. I had a lot of people who said a lot of hurtful things to me. There was one woman who accused me of stealing. There was another woman who said that she didn't want to touch me because she thought that, you know, I was going to rub off evil on her and things like that. There was a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of hate and negativity from the Christians here towards pagans. And so I think that one of the reasons why we get so up in arms and so uppity, as you put it, when a Christian makes a video like this, is that we automatically feel that there's going to be an attack coming. We're on the defensive for obvious reasons, because I don't know a pagan out there that hasn't experienced this from someone, many from their own family members. So, you know, you're going to just have to give us a little bit of credit here for the persecution that we've went through, because I think what it does is it builds up kind of a defensive attitude. And you may not fully recognize that yourself, because I think a lot of the Christians over for where you're from, across the pond, are a lot more liberal, a lot more understanding than the ones over here. You know, if you look at the history of the United States, the Christians that came here from England were the Christians that were so fervent and so fundamental that they didn't fit in England. So they came here, and those were some of the first settlers here. And that kind of Christianity has kind of taken a hold. We're very conservative, especially compared to the other, free world countries around. We're a lot more conservative. You know, a lot of the European countries have already legalized either civil unions or same-sex marriage, and the United States is way far from that. So, you know, that's just some ideas, you know, for you to understand maybe a little bit about the difference in Christianity in Europe and the difference in Christianity here.
What's going on with that? Yeah, I mean, I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions, but I think it is a spiritual thing, to be honest.
If I'm not mistaken, that's kind of a jab against all pagans, isn't it? I mean, it's a spiritual thing, isn't it? No, it's not spiritual, it's actually more sociological.
And I also don't think they like the fact that there's a good case here that has been exposed of satanic ritual abuse.
it does bother people, and I'll tell you why. A lot of people will equate what happened there with what pagans do and with what other occultists do. And so obviously we would get defensive about something like that, because the more people think that, the more we get persecuted. I think you mentioned that you have a regular job that you work, besides doing your ministry. And so do I. I bet you everybody at your work knows that you're Christian. But nobody at work knows that I'm pagan, except maybe one person. And it makes her very, very awkward, because she equates that with Satanism. I live in the southeast of the United States, which is one of the most conservative areas in the United States. If people at my work knew that I was a neo-Hellenist, I would be fired. The last job that I had, people found out what I was, and I started experiencing problems at the workplace. And it's happened to other people. They've gotten fired. They've lost their school scholarships. They've been kicked out of school. They've been, thrown out on the streets by their parents and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it does bother us. Especially considering that this group, I don't even consider them to be real occultists. It seems like, from what I understand, they couldn't even get through the book of the law. They just wanted to hurt kids, and they used Aleister Crowley as an excuse.
These kind of things like to remain hidden. And I think a lot of pagans, occultists, Satanists like to try and make out that this is just the imagination of overzealous, imaginative, evangelical Christians.
For the most part, it is, Shazoolo, because, a lot of times there's several stories of people who claim to be ex-Satanists in this country, or claim to have been ritually abused, and it's been found out that their stories are completely false. And for the most part, the satanic panic and satanic ritual abuse accounts were found to be overwhelmingly false.